Assalamu alaikum. Barakallahu fikum. I'm grateful to be among you. I'm grateful for the invitation. If I may come to our shared important topic through a sustainable development perspective, which is how I found it in my life. 26 years ago, في جبل ديال مراكش. It took about 24 hours to get to the city. And along the way, there was a white mausoleum at the bottom of a mountain, and I didn't know what it was. But I looked for it every time we passed. And I also looked at the mountainside above it because the people needed a tree nursery, and we didn't have land. The people didn't have land to give for 2 years. It takes a seed, 2 years to grow to a sapling, but people need to harvest now. And so we were in search of land, and I see this white mausoleum that captured my imagination. But the mountain above it, if we terraced it, then the people could plant their seeds, they become their saplings, and they transplant them into their fields. I came to learn that those white buildings house the burial of the saint David Moshe, a 1,000-year-old Hebrew tzaddik, Saleh. And it was up to the Moroccan Jewish community to decide whether to give this land. The president in Marrakesh had another parcel which he could immediately sign, and he did. In 2012, since 2012, we planted 150,000 seed at another saint, 700-year-old Saint Raphael Kohen, 150,000 fruit seeds of pomegranate, plum, almond, fig. They went to 153 schools in 16 provinces, benefiting hundreds of farming families. And they knew that these trees came from the Moroccan Jewish community. Now, first, if I may mention, how did we know the people wanted trees? We sat with men and women, young and old, over days, over time. They needed irrigation systems. They needed clean drinking water. Trees ranked among the very top. We pursued the projects of the people. And their initiative developed into an interreligious, intercultural partnership. The first time many of them entered into the area of the Saleh was to get the trees. Hundreds of Moroccan farmers, hundreds of people from the Moroccan Jewish community came together, the United States ambassador, Dwight Bush, the governor. It was a joyful celebration of planting. And the reverence, the site was always respected, 700 years old, 1,000 years old. The site was always respected, but the emotion grew, the attachment grew, the meaning evolved, the purpose became personal for livelihood, for future generations. The house of life, the cemetery, became truly about life today. But the first pilot, it was 25,000 trees a year. The nation needs 1 billion trees, right? The Ministry of Agriculture projects 1 billion trees are needed because 70% of land in the nation generates 10 to 15% of agricultural revenue, 70% of land, 10 to 15% of revenue, because of barley and corn. And it's keeping people down. 75% of those who experience poverty in the nation are in rural places. Are trees enough? No. Processing, building cooperatives, certifying organic, monitoring for carbon credits and commercializing those. It's multidimensional, but 1 billion trees is part of the equation. And so, how many Salihin كاينين في المغرب؟ 600 600 saints are in the nation. We planted at one. Last week we signed the partnership with the governor of Where's Is That, who gave $50,000. Now think about this, friends. The Moroccan government paid $50,000 to build a tree nursery at a Hebrew saint. And with our new partnership with USAID Farmer-to-Farmer, we're going to bring agricultural experts to help the neighboring associations and cooperatives develop their systems of management, the technical capacity to manage a nursery. Now I say this, something decades in the making. And with the possibility that if it grows to scale, 600 saints, now we're about to plant on the second. Waters and Forests has 700 parcels of land. The public agency that grows the nation's nurseries has 700 parcels of land. The Moroccan Jewish community has 600. What does that mean? That the Moroccan Jewish community is playing a role to address the fundamental issue of rural poverty through the use of its land next to its cemeteries. And I just spoke this morning with Ambassador Verdugo, and he said, the next, move forward, on, I'll sign more. Jackie Kadosh in Marrakesh, who'll sign every parcel that they have for free for the people. Now, let's get to the issue of preservation. Morocco has said, yes, multiculturalism, has embodied it in its constitution. We know, we've said it. But Morocco has also said interculturalism for the sake of development. That preservation is not enough. That our intercultural dialogue is absolutely beautiful and essential, but not complete until we address the issue of livelihood. How is it that we're preserving cemeteries and building there in the midst of where not a single girl goes to school after 11 years old? Or that we're building and preserving in areas where the joblessness is completely worrisome? Our challenge and our incredible opportunity is that we can, with complete laws behind our back, preserve and advance the people's development. And I say the people's development because it's also the law of the land that every municipality has to create a plan based on people's decision-making. Participatory plans is every municipality of all the 1,500 have to create people's development plans. That's the law. And if we combine that with the policy of cultural preservation for the sake of human development, for its own sake, and integrated with human development, which means that as we seek to restore a church, for example, in Essaouira, which we are also seeking to do, that church can return to civil society because there's not the Christian community there to use it as a house of worship, that church can return to civil society for them to have finally a place to work, to have workshops, to present their craft. So at once we preserve, and at the same time, those local cooperatives and associations can grow. Tumlelin, Be'azru, Madam Ambassador Lamia, a beautiful example of restoring a monastery and by way of giving our youth a chance to build their employable skills. And we talked together about how in Morocco, the skills to simply graft a tree, if we knew how to graft a tree, we can get a job today. With that huge demand on trees and nurseries. If we knew how to certify organic, we can work. And so how can we restore Tumlelin and give our young people these skills. 54 hectares in Azur, in that place. We can benefit our young. So that's the message. It's like so many things. I mentioned the law of participatory development. Every municipality, it's not being fulfilled. It's a beautiful law that's not being fulfilled. Decentralization is the most beautiful Moroccan model, and it's being frustrated in the travels that we have. Moudawana, 800 women. We've engaged in workshops in 9 provinces. 94% of the women never heard of the word. We have the most amazing frameworks for change, for sustainability, for opportunity, and we're not fulfilling them. And multiculturalism and preservation is one of them. As beautiful as it is, it's not being enough a vehicle for livelihood and education and health as it needs to be, as Morocco calls it to be. And so I finally say this, that if we are policymakers, and we do have funds to disperse, and our intent is cultural preservation, let us require our funding to incorporate this element of livelihood, and let the funding also go toward the promotion of livelihood. Meaning, cultural preservation could fund a tree nursery, and that means that cemetery will live on. That cultural preservation could empower women in Moudawana workshops and through self-discovery and build their confidence, and that's okay. That is cultural preservation if we do it in a church. Thank you. Perhaps very quickly, on the issue of bottom-up, top-down, it's for Morocco, we have to be at all levels. We have to respond to the people. It's driven by their will, by their vision. And we have to reach at the national, at all tiers, all the time, to achieve what people at the community level have set for themselves. In the case of the tree nurseries next to the Hebrew Saints, it first was achieved at a regional level, and then after the Pittsburgh shooting at the synagogue, I wrote a very short letter to His Majesty about how the Moroccan model and this nursery can save the world. And we received an immediate call from the governor and from the Minister of Interior's office. And so that tells me that Morocco understands its place and responsibility and that there's urgency. Let me just say something else to this. The young people are critical because they are our writers. The interns, the volunteers, the university students that come from literally all parts of the world to Morocco because they're having less opportunities in other parts of this region. They visit these places and they write. And their voices can only be honest. These people, these young folks just say what they feel. And of course, with guidance and mentoring, we've had 30 first-time publishers approximately over the past few years. And so we don't have the human resources to be journalists at the same time. The young people who volunteer and intern are critical in creating that broader awareness, and maybe that was what helped us get that national level support.